Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see what if Issei was the Black Dragon God Emperor and got Harem. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. I heard a bird chirp by my window and felt a ray of sunshine hit my eyes. I groaned and pulled the cover over my head. I hated getting out of bed, but absolutely dreaded the way my dad woke me up. I slowly got and stretched when I felt a wave of cold water cover me. Ah! I screamed, falling off my bed. I looked up to see my dad barely holding in his laugh. I glared at him and stood up shivering. I was getting up. He smiled cheekily. Not fast enough. And he skipped out the room. A few seconds later, my mom came in with a towel. Sorry, honey. You know how your dad is. Go take a warm bath before you go to school. Your food should be ready by then. I sighed as the towel covered me. Thanks, Mom. 20 minutes later I was walking to Kuo Academy with my bag slung over my shoulder. My name is Issei, a 17-year-old with an obsession with breasts. Even with this obsession with breasts, I kept it a secret, not wanting to be lumped in with the perverted duo. I walked over the bridge and in front of me stood Kuo Academy. As I walked towards the doors, I heard the whispers of the females around me. The new prince of Kuo is so hot. One squealed and the group instantly agreed. I rolled my eyes and was about to enter the building when I felt like I was being watched. I looked up and saw the most beautiful female I ever saw, Rias, a third-year student and orc leader of Kuo Academy. My breath hitched as she stared at me in the eyes before turning and walking back into the building. I shook my head, confused on why the school's #1 beauty was looking at me. I shrugged and hurried to class, pushing her to the back of my mind. Rias Pav. As I watched the new prince of Kuo, I felt that there was something special about him. I stared into his eyes as he looked up at me, most likely sensing my stare. I turned and walked into the occult research club room, still feeling his gaze. I turned to my vice president, Okeno Himejima, and asked, "Who is this new prince of Kuo?" She looked up from the chess game we were playing and said, "His name is Issei Hyodo. A second-year student and has no friends. Has a record of beating up bullies and thugs in the streets." She then giggled. Ara, he must be special to gain the attention of Butchu. I sighed and moved my queen. Checkmate. Despite being defeated, she just smiled and said, "I still have a long way till I beat you." I nodded and then said, "Can you tell Kaneko to keep an eye on Issei? I feel like he is important." Akeno nodded and bowed before walking out the door. I opened my hand and in a red glow, chess pieces appeared. 8 pawns, 1 knight, 1 bishop, and 1 rook. I looked up and said out loud, "I wonder what piece Issei Hyodo would be." Issei's Pav. After listening to the teacher ramble on about nothing, I started to think about Rias. Why would she be interested with me? When the bell rang, I walked out the school and stood at the bridge, still musing about Rias. I was about to leave when a girl around my age walked up to me. "Hey, are you Issei Hyodo?" the girl asked. I was stunned. I could tell she didn't go to my school because I knew every female there by name. Then how did she know my name? I quickly answered anyways. Yes. She then took a deep breath and proclaimed loudly, "Will you please be my boyfriend?" I was really shocked then. But then it numbed down. I had been asked that same question by all the girls in Kuo Academy, hence why I know all their names. I was thinking about rejecting her, but she looked really cute and nervous, so I decided what the hey. I smiled nicely. "Sure. I'd like to be your boyfriend." Her eyes sparkled when I answered, "Oh, thank you. Is Sunday at 12 o'clock okay?" I was confused at first until I realized that she meant a date on Sunday. It would be perfect. She smiled and started to run off until I called out, "Wait. What's your name?" She stopped and smiled. "Call my Yuma." And then ran out of sight. I smiled and realized that it was almost dusk. I hurried home to see my dinner on the kitchen table and that my parents were asleep. I warmed my food up, slightly excited for my date with Yuma. Time skip Sunday. I brushed my teeth at least 10 times, washed my clothes and cleaned my shoes. When I told my parents I had a date, they teased me all day, making me leave 3 hours early to escape them. After 3 hours went by, Yuma ran up. "Did I make you wait long?" "No. I just got here a couple minutes ago." I looked at what she was wearing and said, "You look very beautiful, Yuma." She smiled and blushed. "Thanks, Issei. You also look nice." I smiled. "Thanks. Let's go to a carnival." She smiled and nodded. As we started to walk, I noticed she had a red stain on the side of her shirt. "Yuma, you have a stain on your shirt," I said, pointing. She looked down, surprised, and then her facial expression became distressed. "Oh no. I thought I took it off. I'm sorry for dressing poorly, Issei." I looked shocked before I smiled. "It's okay, Yuma. You still look beautiful." She then smiled and blushed again, but this time it seemed forced. Before I could think about it even more she said. Let's hurry to the carnival. I heard they have a game that rewards you with jewelry. And then grabbed my hand and started to run, basically dragging me. When we got there, we went straight to the game Yuma was talking about. After my first 3 tries to hit the clown I finally hit it and was given a bracelet which I gave to Yuma. As it became dark, we decided to walk in the park. The moon was out and it illuminated the entire park. I really thought this was romantic and I never felt happier. She walked forward and then turned around. She said innocently. Issei. Can I ask you a question? I smiled and said, sure Yuma. She smiled and leaned on my chest, looking up at me. Will you die for me? My smile died and shook my head, thinking I misheard her. Can you repeat that Yuma? Her smile became cold and sinister and she suddenly flew in the air, her appearance becoming more mature and her attire way more revealing. And suddenly black wings made of feather sprung out her back. The weapon that radiated light appeared in her hand as she said with her sinister smile still on her face. Will you die for me? My eyes widened and I took a step back saying in a shaky voice. What? She chuckled evilly, you humans' emotions are so easy to control. My name is Rainer not Yuma. And though I have to admit that I really liked you, by killing you I will progress in my dream, and my dream is to become a high-class fallen angel, and only way to do that is kill sacred gear users. I stuttered. Sacred gear? She cackled. Oh well, I've said enough. If you want to blame someone, blame God for giving one to you. She was about to throw the light weapon when suddenly she stopped. Oh my. I totally forgot to give you your present. After all, you gave me this adorable bracelet. Donaseek. Give him his present. The man with a black fedora and a grey trench coat flew in with a box with red stuff on it. He smirked and handed me the box before he flew next to Rainer. I shakily opened the box and then I dropped the box in horror. Inside the box laid the 2 heads of my parents. I fell on my knees and I cried like a baby, not even caring that Rainer and Donaseek were there watching with smug smiles on their faces. That's when Donaseek made the mistake of talking. They were so pathetic as I was about to kill them. Pleading to let them live. I can't believe that they were the spawn of something so dangerous. He said laughing coldly. I looked up and saw him smiling gleefully and something inside of me broke in two. I stood up and wobbled in a daze. I suddenly realized that I wasn't in control of myself. A black and gold flash shined and my right arm felt slightly heavier. I then felt something inside me speak. I, who is about to awaken. Am the dragon god who has stolen the principles of ultimate power from God. I ignore the infinite and I laugh at the dream. I shall become the black dragon of power. And I shall sink you to the depths of the nightfall in purgatory. Juggernaut Drive. The black and gold aura burst through the star-filled night and I instantly blacked out. Rias Pav. I was taking a shower, just getting ready to get some sleep when I heard an inhuman roar shake the earth. I instantly stopped the shower and magically dressed myself. As soon as steeped out the shower, the members of my peerage appeared in the Gremory clan seal. I asked frightened. What was that? The Keno shook her head. We don't know. It sounded like it came from the park. Kaneko, go to Dot, where is Kaneko? I asked distressed. The Keno paled in realization. She is at the woods. She was following Issei. That roar must have been Issei. I hope Kaneko is alright. I summoned the Gremory clan seal and stepped into it, followed by Akeno and Kiba. We appeared behind a tree before we instantly started to suffocate. What being's aura is so powerful that it can suffocate something miles away from it? I managed to choke out, fly. I called upon my devil wings and flew up as fast as I could. When I finally couldn't breathe anymore, the suffocating aura disappeared, almost making me fall out the sky in sheer relief. I noticed how high I was and looked around trying to find my servants when I heard their wings. I turned to my left to see them flying towards me with Kaneko in Kiba's arms. I sighed in relief and sent the unconscious Rook back to the orc room with a magic circle. Did you find out if it was Issei that caused that roar? The Keno and Kiba shook their heads as they were too out of breath to speak. I huffed and said. I heard the roar coming from the north area of the park. Let's stay out of the aura's range and spy from a distance. We flew forward warily, trying to see the potential enemy from a bird's view. After a couple of minutes of flying north, Kiba called out to me. But you, look below. I looked down and noticed there were 3 people fighting, one covered in black and gold, dragon-like armor and the others with feathered wings. I growled. Fallen angels. What are they doing in my territory? I was about to rush down there when I saw the person in the armor grab one of the fallen angel's wings and rip them from its back. Could that really be Issei? Kiba said in a horrified whisper. Issei's pav. Immediately after I fell unconscious, I appeared at the mouth of a cave. Confused, I looked around before yelling, hello, is anybody here? Almost instantly, a dark laugh filled the cave. Could this be my first host? Weak, but full of potential. I heard something very large move in the back of the cave before I felt the ground beneath me shake. I soon realized that the ground shaking was being caused by the steps of the creature and immediately back away. As I backed away, bright golden reptilian eyes shined in the darkness before the body that the eyes belonged to showed itself, almost making me collapse in sheer fright. The creature was a dragon, with pitch black scales, spikes lined down its spine, a horn on top of his snout. It was at least 150 feet long, with a wingspan of 100 feet. It had golden claws that were as big as a bus, and golden spikes on its tail were at least 18 feet. But the worst thing about it was that it radiated tons of power, almost making me kneel in fear. He gave a gruff snort. Most beings would be bowing and groveling at my feet by now. But you don't. Why is that, Hyodo? I could barely speak. Because you don't seem like a threat. He laughed loudly. That's because I'm not. So that we can have a complete conversation, I'll stop releasing my aura. Then the pressure around me lessened to the point where I could breathe and stand normally. In reality, I have taken over your body, punishing the murderers of you adopted parents. Since you're my first host ever, I can only use the knowledge of what I've seen in the past. I cut him off, not even caring that he could kill with a flick of his hand. Wait, you said adopted parents, they aren't my real parents. He looked amused. No boy. Your memories have been locked away. I have the power to give them to you, but in order for me to do so, you have to take control of your body. How am I supposed to do that? You're so much more powerful than me. He sighed as if he was going to give a long speech. The form you're in is called Juggernaut Drive, an enhancement of abilities and a stronger form of the Balance Breaker. In order for it to be Juggernaut Drive, it has to be influenced by the negative thoughts of my past hosts. But since you are my first host, the Juggernaut Drive you are in isn't the typical type. Meaning that unlike the Heavenly Dragon hosts, you can control the Juggernaut Drive and summon it whenever you want, since it runs on your negative thoughts. And because of your heritage, you are not going insane, and your life force isn't draining. So in order for you to gain control, all you have to do is think about all the things that you are happy for in life, or the things that make you happy. I nodded and closed my eyes, searching through my mind to see what I'm happy for. Then I found it. Boobs. Oh, how much I'm happy for boobs being created is indescribable. Suddenly I felt a bright light shining around me. Curious, I opened my eyes and looked down to find myself becoming transparent. I looked up at the dragon and yelled. What's your name? He gave me what I think was a smirk and said. I'm called Omega, the legendary Black Dragon God Emperor. And then the light became unbearably hot and then I blacked out. When I came to, I was on my back, looking at the stars and the moon. I started to sit up, but I groaned in pain. I tried again and managed to stand up. I looked around and blanched. The fountain in the park was reduced to rubble, trees were crushed, and worst of all, blood was everywhere. I took a shaky step forward and the moonlight shined on me, causing me to look down, and then I vomited. My whole body was covered in blood. I rose my hands to face, shaking at the sight of blood. I then felt a huge surge of pain go through my chest and stomach and I fell back on my back. As the world started to darken, I soon realized that I was about to die. I was about to die without sucking on boobs or finding out who my real parents were. I felt tears run down my face as the world kept getting darker. I then saw a wave of red and it instantly reminded me of Rias Gremory, my first crush. I didn't even get to speak to her. Oh, how I hate my life. As the world got darker, I heard a familiar female voice in the background. You are very strong, Issei. Don't worry, you live, but as the servant of Rias Gremory. Then the world went black. I heard a bird chirp by my window and felt a ray of sunshine hit my eyes. I groaned and pulled the cover over my head. This feels like deja vu. I then stopped as I remembered what happened last night. I sat up quickly and jumped out of bed, feelings over my chest and stomach. What the hell? This has to be a dream. I said as I looked at my chest. It was perfectly healed, not one scar on it. I then felt a draft and looked down. I was completely naked. What the why am I naked? I said alarmed. I didn't even remember coming home last night. I had to strip you down so I could heal you properly. A female voice said in front of me. I looked up to see Rias Gremory in my bed, naked. Her beautiful tits bounced as she stretched. I resisted the urge to faint. What are you doing in my bed naked? I then realized that if me and Rias had sex, I didn't remember a damn thing. Oh, don't worry. Rias said, getting off my bed. We didn't do anything. I'm still a virgin. My jaw dropped. Rias was standing before me completely naked. I felt like I was in heaven. I was brought out of my head when Rias coughed and smirked. I see you like breasts. I compassed myself when I realized that my secret was about to found out. What man doesn't like them? Rias slid on her panties and held up her bra. Can you do this for me, Issei? I numbly nodded and took the bra. Ah. This is what a woman's titty holder feels like. I stopped dreaming and hurriedly put her bra. As she started to get dressed, I asked her a question. You said you had to heal me. For what? You were stabbed in the chest and stomach and you almost died, so I healed you to reincarnate you into a devil. Rias said simply. I blanched. Did you just say a devil? Rias chuckled. I'll explain later. After school, I'll send an escort to escort you to the orc room. But for now, let's walk to school together. After what seemed like a lifetime of escaping jealous boys, a boy walked up to me. He had blonde hair, a lean build, and light blue eyes. So this is old Prince of Kuo. Hello Issei Hyodo. My name is Kiba Udo. I am your escort to the orc room. The now identified Kiba said with a small smile. I nodded and followed him through the academy. As we passed, girls were whispering to each other. I almost threw up when one said that me and Kiba were partners of love. Kiba just smiled and said. It never gets old. We arrived to the old schoolhouse that was closed down after fire. I don't know if that is true, but I didn't want to look up the facts. Kiba opened the door for me and thanked him in response. The middle of the room was two couches, facing each other with a coffee table in between them. Two people were sitting on the couch facing the door. I instantly recognized Akeno Himejima, the second most beautiful lady of Kuo Academy. The other was a female with silver hair and was very short. I think she was the school mascot or something. I heard the sound of running water and looked to the left to see Rias coming out of the shower drying her hair. She looked surprised to see me. Issei. I didn't think you'd get here that fast. I answered nervously. Is that a problem? Because I can just leave and then come back in a couple of minutes. She shook her head and sat down. No, it isn't a problem. Please, sit down next to Akeno. I nodded and sat down next to her, trying not to touch her as unnoticeable as possible. But she saw it and giggled. Ara. I don't bite. Unless you want me to. And with that sentence, she nibbled my right earlobe. I gasped and blood rushed to my face. Rias got angry and said. Akeno. Behave yourself. Akeno stopped and ran her finger down my side. Whenever you need help Issei, I'll help you anytime. She then whispered in my ear. In every type of way. Akeno then got up and stood by Ria's couch. I felt flushed and I tried to get my hormones under control. Rias said. Issei, I said I was going to explain everything to you, and I will, okay? I nodded and she continued. Issei, my name is Rias Gremory, heiress to the Gremory clan, and I'm a pure-blooded devil. Akeno, Kiba, Kaneko, and you two are my servants. Akeno is my queen, Kiba is my knight, and Kaneko is my rook. They are not pure-blooded devils because I reincarnated them into devils, just like I want to do to you. Now Issei, tell me why the fallen angels were trying to kill you. My mood darkened as I remembered what Rainer told me. They said I had a sacred gear and that in order to become high-class fallen angels, they would have to kill sacred gear users. Rias nodded, appearing as if she was in deep thought. Before I ask you to do something, I'm going to have to explain something to you. Centuries ago, the three great factions waged war against each other, the devils, the fallen angels, and the angels. Millions of beings in each faction died, making each faction weak. So in order to gain numbers, the devils created evil pieces, the fallen angels made angels become impure, and the angels recruited people of the church. But the war only ended because the two heavenly dragons, the Welsh dragon and the vanishing dragon, were destroying everything in their fight. So the three factions made a pact and defeated them together, before putting their souls in two sacred gears, the divine dividing and the boosted gear, ceasing the endless carnage. The reason I told you that story is because you have a scared gear that is dragon-based, which is causing me to think that you have one of them. Stand up Issei. She said and I stood up, unsure what to do. Now focus on the strongest thing that comes to mind. She said. Your sacred gear should come out easy because of the devil auras in the room. I nodded and closed my mind, trying to think of the strongest thing that came to mind. My thoughts instantly grasped on the image of Omega and I poured all my willpower into the image before I opened my eyes and yelled on instinct, forbidden gear. Almost immediately, the room was filled with a black and gold flash and my right hand felt heavier. I looked down at it and brought it to my face. It was Omega's hand, or at least it looked just like it. It started at my fingers and ended near my elbow. It was black with golden spikes coming out of it, my fingers were converted into golden claws and it had a golden jewel in the middle. I heard a gasp and looked up to see Rias with her hand at her mouth and the others looking tense. Rias pointed at my hand and said with a shaky voice, that's supposed to be a myth. I looked down as the golden jewel shined and I heard Omega's voice. Do I sound like a myth Crimson Ruin Princess? I looked back up and I saw Rias immediately sober at the name Omega called her. Issei, your sacred gear is called the Forbidden Gear of Power. It is the strongest Longinus and no one has ever wielded it because it was forbidden and the wielder had to be killed. But even though no one except you has wielded it, the three faction made that law to make sure one faction wasn't stronger than the other. But now that I know what your sacred gear is, I have a question to ask you. Do you want to be my pawn? I stared at her and then busted out laughing. Rias looked at me shocked and slightly angry. Why would I be your slave when I'm way more powerful than you? Much less than the pawn piece. Sorry, but I will not be held down by you, Rias. As for training, I'll ask Omega to train me. Thank you for everything, Rias, but I'll not be your slave. If you need help, you know where I live. Have a nice day. I nodded to her and walked home before I started to talk to Omega. Omega, you told me if I took control over my body, you would unseal my memories. Yes. I planned on doing when you go to sleep tonight. Omega said grimly. Why when I sleep? Because when I give you your memories back, you will pass out. So I decided to wait until you were already asleep. Omega explained. Thanks for the concern, Omega, but I'd rather do it now. I said determined. Omega sighed. Of course. Prepare yourself. I tensed for a couple minutes, but nothing happened. I relaxed, confused, before I felt a humongous amount of pain cut through my head. I didn't even get to scream before I saw the world tilt sideways and then go black. I groaned as I fell back on my bed. Training with Omega was harsh, but productive. I remember when I first started, I couldn't do anything. But 2 months after gaining my memories and training with Omega, I was a changed man. My real name is Issei Lucifer, son of Crom Cruach and Rizavam Lucifer. Omega said that my mother was raped by both of them at the same time, causing their sperm cells to mix, creating me. After gaining my memories, my hair color changed to dark silver and my eye color black with golden streaks. My regular height became from 5'9" to 6'1" and my weight 110 to 130. All in all, I think I looked better. I turned on my side, thinking about school. I haven't went since my adopted parents died and was now kind of missing it. I sat up and spoke to my right arm. I think I'm going to go to Kuo Academy tomorrow. I haven't seen Rias and her peerage since I rejected their offer. Omega, a tch sound. Does someone miss Rias? I blushed. Shut up, Omega. Omega then gave a loud laugh. Young love is so funny. I was about to yell at him when a red circle appeared in my room. I instantly recognized the Gremory clan seal and someone stepped out. Speak of the devil. Rias. What are you doing here? She looked at me with desperation. Oh, Issei. Please make love to me. Before she jumped on me, knocking me on my back. I blushed when she straddled my waist, making me instantly go hard. Fucking hormones. Please, Issei. I wouldn't have came here if I didn't need you. Please, this is the only way to break it. I felt confused. Break what? But before I could ask, she took off her top and bra, making her perfect boobs hang free and leaving my mouth dry. Please, Issei. Hearing her desperate plea, I broke out of my hormones control and flipped her over so that I would be on top and her on bottom. But instead of taking her virginity and I got off of her and got off the bed. I can't do it, Rias. Tears sprang in her eyes. Why, Issei? Am I not good enough for you? No, Rias. You're prefect, but you're not in your right mind and I'd hate for you to feel like I forced you when you were insecure. I consoled her. That calmed her down and I gave a blanket as she sat up. I was about to ask her why she would do something so crazy when I felt magic bundling behind me. Someone is coming. A bright red flash illuminated the room and in the magic circle stood a woman who rivaled Ria's beauty. I took a deep sniff and my eyes widened. The strongest queen is here. Grafia had a disapproving look on her face when she cast her gaze over Rias and I. Did you really try and break off this marriage by having sex? Rias as a heiress, you shouldn't show yourself to someone as lowly as him. I bristled and was about to launch off a verbal attack when Rias quickly stood up, letting the cover fall off and making me turn around in embarrassment. I can have an intercourse with anyone I want. If maybe I had a choice on who I was to marry, I wouldn't be in this predicament. I heard Grafia sigh as if she was talking to a 2-year-old who wanted a toy and couldn't get it. That isn't up to me. That is Lord Gremory's decision. Anyway, Lord Lucifer wants to speak to you. I heard Rias sniff with disdain and a sound of clothes being put on. You can turn around now, Issei. I turned around and saw Rias standing next to Grafia. Please come to school tomorrow, Issei. A red glow began to cover them both. I need you. Then they disappeared. I sighed and sat down on the edge of the bed. Looks like action came to me sooner than I thought. Omega snorted. That's an understatement. Time skip next day. The moment I walked into the school, all the girls were all over and the guys were plotting my death. My teacher immediately started to apologize for my parents' death. This could get annoying. When the school bell started to ring, all the boys formed a circle around me. 2 guys walked in front, the perverted duo. The one with the glasses pointed a finger at me and was about to start yelling when lightning fast, I broke it in half. He just stood there and then started yelling and crying like a baby. All the guys looked at me in fear. I just smiled innocently and said, I don't like fingers in my face. I walked past the fear-stricken boys and walked towards the old schoolhouse. When I saw it, I teleported inside, hiding in a shadow to see what they were talking about. Rias was sitting drinking tea, but was far from relaxed as she listened to Grafia explain the situation. Riser should be coming any second now, and Lord Gremory told me to tell you to behave yourself. Rias kept drinking tea as if she didn't hear Grafia, but her hand broke the teacup handle suddenly. Instead of reacting, Rias just magically fixed the handle and kept drinking. I respect her self-control level. If that was me, a lot of things would have been destroyed. I looked around to see Akeno, Kaneko, Kiba and some unknown boy around Ria's age standing behind Rias. Grafia was about to speak when an orange magic circle appeared and a column of flames erupted from them. Everybody tensed except Rias and Grafia. When the column of fire died down, a man in his early 20s posed there. I almost busted out laughing at his attempt to look sexy. He had short blonde hair and blue eyes that basically shot out arrogance. Ria's look of disgust deepened when he sat next to her with a lecherous smile. "Hello Rias, my beautiful bride. Riser is here to get you for the wedding." Immediately I burst out laughing as I couldn't hold it in anymore. This idiot is so arrogant that he spoke in third person. Riser looked annoyed at the sight of me. "Who is this? One of you servants?" Rias looked at me with thankful eyes. "No, he is an ally of mine." Riser looked at me with contempt. "He looks weak. But of course no one can match Riser Phoenix." I started laughing at him again. He grew angry. "What are laughing at, boy?" I stopped laughing when he called me boy. You're so arrogant that you speak in third person. If this is how all high-class devils act, I don't want to meet any of them." He grew angry and looked at Rias. "You better tell your weak ally here to shut up if he doesn't want to be burnt to turned into a crisp." Rias looked at me. "Please don't cause any trouble, Issei." I nodded and stepped back. The meeting continued as of where Rias kept stopping Riser from touching her in the inappropriate places. He then said, "When are we going to leave, Rias? Riser has to get his suit tailored." I smirked but managed to keep myself from laughing out loud as Rias responded. "I am not marrying you, Riser. I have no interest in you whatsoever." Riser grew angry and stood up to face Rias' peerage. "If you won't come down to the underworld willingly, then I burn your peerage to ash and drag you down there myself." He then launched a large fireball at Rias' peerage and the unknown boy covered Akeno and Kaneko with his body. I sighed and stepped in front of Rias' peerage and into the way of the fireball with my hands in my pockets. "Issei!" Rias cried out in panic. I smiled and lifted my right hand out in front of me and said, "Absorb." Instantly, the fireball was sucked up in my hand. Rias gasped while Riser and Grafia stood there shocked. How could just absorb Riser flame? That was made of phoenix fire. I smiled and said, "No wonder it tasted a little spicier than usual." He grew even angrier and a bigger fireball appeared in his hand. "Well, let's see if you can absorb this." He was about to throw it, but Grafia spoke up. "That is enough, Riser. Surzich foresaw that this would happen and said that a rating game is to be issued between you and Rias' peerage." He smiled and dissipated his fireball. "Ha! Riser and his peerage will win this rating game and Rias will be his wife. And if Rias wins, the marriage will be destroyed," Grafia said. Rias nodded and said, "My peerage will be ready in 7 days." Riser laughed and said, "Riser is so sure he will destroy you that he gives you 10 days. Grafia, with a disgusted facial expression on her face, nodded. "The rating game will take place in 10 days. Train hard, Rias." With that, she and Riser left in a magic circle. Rias sighed and sat down with her head in her hands. I walked over and put my hand on her shoulder. She jumped and looked up, meeting a kind smile. "You guys will beat Riser, especially if I help you." Rias looked shocked. "How will you help us?" "I know a couple of people that owe me favors. I think that they can train you good enough for the rating game." Rias stood up and hugged me. "Oh, thank you, Issei." I chuckled, but my face was red with embarrassment. I heard a cough behind me and Rias let go of me. I turned around to see the unknown boy with a confused expression on his face. "Who are you and why do you look similar yet different like I saw you before?" I narrowed my eyes and said, "What's your name?" He said, "Darien Hyodo. I moved from Europe to live with aunt and uncle, but when I came." I finished his sentence for him. "You were told they were dead." He looked shocked and nodded. "You, Darien, are my adoptive cousin. My name used to be Issei Hyodo until I found out who I was 4 months ago." "Then who are you?" Rias said behind me. I took a deep breath and said, "My name is Issei Lucifer, son of Crom Cruich and Rizavam Lucifer, grandson of the original Lucifer and wielder of Omega, the Black Dragon God Emperor. And the master of Tiamat, the strongest dragon king." Omega's voice came out of nowhere. "Omega? That was supposed to be a surprise for me, tell them later." I yelled at him angrily. He laughed. "Well, they're surprised. I growled. This fool is always throwing out my achievements. No one needs to hear them. Rias gaped. Tiamat. I shrugged and rubbed the back of my head. You weren't supposed to know until you began training. Wait, who is Tiamat, Omega, Crom Cruach, Risivum Lucifer? Darian asked with his hand raised. A deep voice suddenly spoke. Omega, the Black Dragon God Emperor. It has been a long time, father. Darian looked at his left and said. Boosted gear. A red gauntlet with yellow spike coming out the sides and a green jewel in the middle appeared on his left arm. Drake. What do you mean, father? I thought you said dragons were born from energy. Drake, the Red Dragon Emperor sighed. Yes, Darian, but Omega raised and trained me since the day I was born. That's right. You were so cute when you were a young dragon. But then you grew up and started fighting that white dragon Albion. Omega grumbled at the end. Drake protested. He kept trying to take over my territory. What was I supposed to do? Pick his ass and use the training I gave you. Omega shot back. I tried, but that dumbest dividing power kept taking me off guard. Whatever Reed did. If God was still alive, I'd kill him all over again. Omega grumbled. What? Everybody in the room yelled. I heard Omega chuckle nervously. Oops. You guys weren't supposed to know that. But now that you do, it's true that I killed God. But it was a double-edged sword. He also killed me and put in forbidden gear. I sighed. Aside from that, Omega and Tiamat will train you guys for the raiding game. How come you just won't be in Ria's peerage? Darian asked. Because I obey no one. I answered darkly. Oh. Darian said weakly. Well. Rias said to break the tension. When do we start training? I was thinking about tomorrow since I. No, Rias. We train today. I want you guys to go to my house and wait for me there. I have to get Tiamat from Russia. I interrupted. Fibber raised his hand like he was in school. Why Russia? I shrugged. Tiamat likes the cold. After I called Tiamat, I teleported outside my front door. Just when I was about to walk in, a seductive purr sounded behind me. What did you call me for, master? I sighed and turned around to see Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon King, in female form. She was a couple inches shorter than me, with perfect D-cup breasts and a perfect Hercules-shaped body. When I first met her, I didn't know she was Tiamat, so when she caught me looking, she instantly tried killing me. Long story short, I barely won with my juggernaut drive, and she instantly started to follow me around calling me master. I couldn't help but smirk when I saw her seductive pose. I need you to help train Ria's Gremory and her peerage. She instantly got serious and stood straight. The Crimson Ruin Princess. No problem. Do I have to train you also? I laughed out loud when Omega spoke up. Hell no. I train Issei. You're too weak to train Issei. Last time I checked, he kicked your ass. Tiamat scowled when she heard Omega's voice. After all, Omega never let her live it down that she was beaten. I put my hand on her shoulder as we walked in the door. Don't worry, Tiamat. Omega will stop teasing you one day. Like hell I will. Omega howled with laughter. Be quiet, Omega. I scolded him before Tiamat and I walked in my living room where Rias and everyone else sat. Rias didn't even notice that Tiamat was beside me. How did your house get so big? I thought you lived in an apartment. I did, but decided to expand it so I could get more room. But enough about me, meet Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon King. I said, gesturing to Tiamat. Rias looked shocked at Tiamat's appearance. You're Tiamat. Tiamat smirked. Yes. Didn't expect someone as beautiful as I am to be your trainer. I rolled my eyes. I forgot to say that she's very conceited. She smacked me in the back of the head and me, being unprepared, flew forward and straight into Ria's boobs. I heard multiple gasps of shock and jumped back with a bright red face. I heard laughter to my left and turned towards Tiamat with a growl. Tiamat. She instantly stopped laughing and took a step back as black aura spread from my body. I took a step towards her and then burst out laughing with Omega. What did I tell you? She is afraid of you. I wiped the tears from my eyes. I should have believed you earlier. I then noticed that everybody was staring at me with a shocked expression on their faces. I calmed myself and said with a serious expression. Enough. Time for training. Time skipped 9 days. It has been 9 days since Rias and her peerage started training, and for the most part they were improving very well. When they first started, Ria's destruction power was uncontrollable. Akeno tended to use just lightning power instead of earth, water and air. Kiba had low defense, and he wasn't as fast as he should be. Kaneko was too slow, and her strength wasn't being used to its fullest potential. Then there was Darian, who was weak in every department. Omega decided that he would train him alongside with me so he could use Drake's power to its fullest potential. Now, Rias could control her power to the point where it could rival her big brother's power control. Akeno learned how to use all elements equally, even though his main base of power is lightning, which I don't understand. Kiba's speed and defense went up with leaping bounds, so much to the point where I could barely see him. Kaneko also became faster and stronger. Being able to keep up with Kiba when he is going at his middle gear, and Darien, after intense training from Omega, was easily the strongest out of the whole peerage, especially after he gained his scale mail balance breaker. Right now, I decided to see how they fared against me in a fight. I walked in the living room, and Darien was sitting there looking like he was in deep thought. Darien. He instantly jerked his head with a confused expression on his face. Meet me in the backyard. Today is the final test. He nodded with a determination radiating from him. I walked away searching for the rest of them, but I couldn't find them. Confused, I searched for aura signals and still couldn't find them. Irritated, I walked in the backyard to ask Darien where they were when I saw them on the ground, mediating. I nodded in approval before I cleared my throat. That was good work, you guys. I couldn't even detect your auras. They opened their eyes and stood up. But now, it's time to test how far you got. They nodded and got in a battle stance, but Tiamat walked out and stood beside me. I rose an eyebrow. You're going to assist me? She gave me a wink. Isn't that what servants are for? I smirked and turned towards Rias. Remember. Don't hold back. Begin. Immediately, Kiba rushed towards me with a demonic sword summoned and Kaneko right behind him. Rias and Akeno took to the skies as Darien summoned his boosted gear. I smirked and yelled. Forbidden gear balance break. Forbidden gear balance break. Omega echoed. Instantly, black armor with golden jewels covered me with golden wings sprouting from my back. I rushed Kiba and Kaneko and met them in the middle of the field. Kiba sliced down at me while Kaneko threw a punch at my midsection. I deflected Kiba's sword with my left arm and grabbed Kaneko's hand with my right hand. I instantly crushed it and kicked her in the chest, causing to fly back into the woods. I heard multiple yells calling Kaneko, but Kiba wasn't one of them. Kiba then yelled. Sword birth. Sword started to sprout from the ground and I hurriedly took flight but was blasted by a bolt of lightning. When I hit the ground, tendrils of vines started to wrap me up, but I quickly ripped them off, only to be hit by a beam of power. As I flew back farther in the forest, I heard Omega taunting me. Are you just going to let them beat you like that? You beat Tiamat and she's doing better than you. I growled and repaired my armor. Like hell I'm going to let them beat me. I flew up out of the forest and noticed that they were all teaming up against Tiamat. I flew at the speed of sound and punched Akeno, sending her flying into Rias where they both flew into a tree. Darien, noticing my sudden appearance, flew up to my level. With a yell he said. Dragon shot. The same red beam that hit me earlier came at me, but this time I was ready. I held my hand out in front of me and said. Absorb. The beam was instantly sucked into my armor and I felt immensely more powerful. So that's the power of Drag. Wasting no time I flew towards him and yelled. Phoenix punch. Covering my fist with phoenix flames, I punched Darien in chest, causing him to fly straight in the ground, making a crater. But I wasn't finished. Followed by Dragon Phoenix shot. Holding out my right hand, I shot Darien with a black and red beam. As soon as it connected with Darien, an explosion erupted. When the smoke cleared, Darien was laying on his back with his armor completely destroyed and blood coming out his mouth. I landed on the ground and deactivated my sacred gear. I stumbled over towards Darien and healed him my demonic power. When I finished, I laid down, becoming lightheaded. When I came to, Rias, Akeno and Kaneko were sitting beside me and Darien with worried expressions on their faces. But they weren't looking at us, they were looking above me. I turned around and saw Tiamat and Kiba still fighting. Kiba was obviously on the losing side, but Tiamat was injured as well. I stood up and walked towards them. Tiamat. Kiba. The fight is over. But they just kept fighting. Irritated, I blew a warning shot of fire at both of them, which they both dodged. I said that was enough. Tiamat nodded and backed away. Kiba, with bloodlust still radiating from him, did the same, but with greater difficulty. When I decided that they were calmed down, I turned towards Rias with a smile. You guys are now ready. Rias smiled, but it turned into a confused glare. What is Omega's power? I know that Drake's is to boost power, Albion's is to divide power, so what is Omega's? Omega's power is to absorb power, making the user able to use the power he absorbed. The only downfall is that you can only use the power you absorbed once before you can absorb it again. Rias nodded and I said with a clap. Well, let's get some sleep. Tomorrow is your tournament and you have to win. Do you understand? Everybody nodded with determination written on their faces. I had no doubt that they were going to kick Riser's flaming ass. And? So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.